From Cards by Christine, here with you on a Technique Thursday to share with you the Shimmery Watercolor Wash technique. Alright, now, it's actually just a watercolor wash technique, but you'll see on this pool party portion, you may see, there's some shimmer to it. But regardless, we're going to go through both portions of this card using watercolor wash. And I love watercolors. I love watercolor washes. I love everything about watercolor. So I am very excited to share this with you, but I do know that watercolor is something that's a little difficult, maybe for people who aren't as artsy, or for people who don't have patience, or honestly, it's a hard thing to do in like a class setting because watercoloring takes a while to dry. So I'm going to share with you how I did this. And even in the time it took me to make this, I did still use the dryer to, like a heat gun to dry it, because it still wasn't completely dry by the time I was through prepping all the stuff for the video. So, you know, the longer you let it dry naturally, supposedly the better the outcome is, because you're allowing the ink to seep into the paper on its own terms, whereas when you're using a heat tool, you're kind of forcing it to dry. So it may have a little bit of a different look, but it's all good. It still turned out beautiful, and it still will turn out beautiful no matter how you do it or how you let it dry. So that is one tip that I have for you right off the bat, is watercolor washes will never look the same. This one that I'm doing live in front of you will not look like this, no matter how hard I try. And I think that's what I like about watercolor, is it's definitely unique, and you can make beautiful things, but don't need to be too stressed about how it looks. So, step one, grab your watercolor paper. Stampin' Up! Sells Fluid 100 watercolor paper. It's a 5x7 paper. I was strategic about how I designed this card because I wanted to get 2 pieces out of 1 piece of watercolor paper. So, you know what I did? I cut the 5x7 in half and made it 5 by 3.5. And then I just took a quarter off of that 5-inch side. So actually this piece is 4 3/4 by 3.5, because I wanted it equally matted around the edges. And then what I like to do when I watercolor, and you don't have to do it this way, but what I like to do is tape it to a solid surface, because then as it's drying, it dries flat. One thing with watercolor is especially if you don't tape it down, you'll get a lot of waviness and curl to your paper. You still may by taping it down, but it'll be a lot less. And when I taped it down, I used washi tape. Just use a washi tape that you're not in love with, something that you, if you're a washi tape user, something you're not in love with that you wouldn't use on a project. Or if you don't have or use washi tape, you could always use masking tape, would work just as well. So I was very intentional about how I taped it down though. You can see here I used just what was equivalent to maybe 1/8 of an inch, somewhere around 1/8 of an inch, so that when I take it off, you'll have a matted look to it. Now, the other thing you can do is use a larger piece and trim it down when you're done. That obviously would work better, but I didn't want to waste that paper. So, yeah, that's my preparatory steps. Now that it's on here, the fun begins. So I'm bringing in our water painters. Love using water painters. They work great for watercoloring. I'm going to use the fan type brush. Maybe that's not what it's called. Well, if you're a painter, you know what a fan brushes. This really isn't quite a fan brush, but it's a flat brush. It's the biggest of the brushes. We've got a real small brush for details. Then we have another paintbrush looking tip that's a little thicker. And then last we have this flat brush. I am going to use the flat brush, and I'm going to use the inks that I used from the prep card. But what I have here is Pool Party and Misty Moonlight re-inkers, and just using a drop of each of them. And honestly, this is a drop that created this card, and now I'm going to use for this card as well. The bristles are damp, but here you can see on the barrel it says pushed. You're going to want to push some water out. Now, re-inker ink is really concentrated, so if I took this ink and put it straight on this paper, it would be really, really dark. So I want to bring in some of that water, and what I did was I brought it into a puddle off to the side that's not really close to either of the inks. So I made myself a puddle of water, and then I dragged it into the ink. So I'm kind of getting a diluted version of first Pool Party. And I kind of made the Pool Party section about a third, and then the Misty Moonlight section about 2/3. No rhyme or reason, no exact measurements, that's just kind of how I did it. All right, then when watercoloring, it is best practice to always have a paper towel nearby, because you never know if you put too much ink on the paper or if you make a mistake. Water is fluid, so you can kind of bring that paper towel in to kind of move it around. And water, you know, like I said, you're never going to get the exact same look time and time and time again, but at least then you have a little bit of control. So I'm wiping the bristles off on a damp portion of this paper towel to get as much of the Pool Party ink out as possible. Then I'm going to switch to doing the same thing with our Misty Moonlight. So taking some of that water and diluting some of the Misty Moonlight, starting just by putting down a base of, now I can see my bristles are not very wet anymore, so it's pretty strong. It's okay, you can kind of dilute it per se, but that's why I'm trying to be real intentional about my strokes. I'm not just kind of going willy-nilly. I'm making them in a smooth, flowing pattern. Okay, I'm gonna bring a little bit more water down. Where the two colors meet, it doesn't really matter how they interact because I'm going to be covering it with an iceberg, but you know, in a different design, you may want to be intentional about how you introduce the two colors to each other. But essentially, I'm filling the paper with a wash of Pool Party and then a wash of Misty Moonlight. And then I'm going to bring back in some details. So now I'm going to take my brush and have a little bit of a darker amount of Misty Moonlight. So less diluted, more into the concentrated blob of re-inker ink. And now with that, I'm going to be very careful about bringing in streaks. And depending on how wet the area I'm bringing it into will depend on how much it runs or how much it stays in a linear fashion. And you're literally just going to keep introducing color until you feel like you like it. And I feel like I like the Misty Moonlight portion already, so I'm not going to add any more. I don't think. We'll see how, as I continue to talk through this, how it dries. I might want to add a little more, but for now I feel very happy with it. At this point for this card, I'm done with my water painter. So I'm going to quickly swivel behind me and rinse it out with water so that the bristles stay as clean as possible. So bear with me for a second as I do that. One more thing that I do want to tell you about doing watercolor washes or watercolor in general, the more concentrated your ink is, the brighter and more vibrant it's going to be. The more washy you want it to look, like washed out you want it to look, the more water you want to add. So you can start by having a water wash. Plain water, no pigment in it, just water on your watercolor paper, and then start introducing your pigment that way. That'll have the most diluted effect to it, and you can always add more. With watercolor, you can subtract ink using a paper towel, but it's a lot harder to take ink away than it is to add it. So that's my tip to you, is do your best to layer ink on. Okay, so now we've got the pool party section, and I wanted to have the ice area look shimmery. So watercolor wash is all cool and great. I've kind of covered that once before in a very, very, very primitive version of a Technique Thursday back when I was doing it in my studio. So I kind of covered the bases again, but now the really cool part that I really want to show off is using your Stella pen. You see how Stella has this brush tip? So you can absolutely use your Stella pen to watercolor as well. Now, of course, you're going to get glitter in here, and I think that's really cool, and I want to do that, but I'm only going to do that down here in the pool party section. I want some of that differentiation between the sky and the water. Now, Stella brushes, unless they're brand new, have this glimmer in the tip already. So I'm not going to squeeze the barrel to add any more to it. I'm just going to put my Stella bristles into my puddle of pool party that I already have on this block, and then bring it in. So that should be plenty. Then when you're done, you may still have some residual color in your brush bristles, so bring it over to your piece of paper towel. I was gonna say toilet paper. I'm like, I know that's not what I'm trying to say. It is early morning, not super early morning when I'm filming this, but early morning. My brain is still starting to try to kick in. So sorry if some of the things I'm saying aren't making the most sense. But anyways, so you're gonna wanna pull your Stella brush bristles through a piece of damp paper towel to get any of that pool party color out before you put it away, because otherwise the next time you use it, you may be bringing some residual color into your project that you don't want. One more thing to share with you before we move on, and this is all great because this is all helping my watercolor paper dry, but one more thing to share with you is I like pulling ink onto a block to use. So I've got my re-inkers on the block, and I'm kind of just using that block as my palette. But you can, and I'm going to pull away for a second, you can also well up ink on the lid of your ink pad, either by squeezing your pad when it's shut, or by putting re-inker straight in here. If you have been with us since the start, if you've been watching these technique and tip videos since the start, you will know that I don't prefer to do that. I don't like inking up my pads. It's kind of like an OCD personal thing. However, a lot of people do it that way, and there really is nothing wrong with doing it that way. Just to let you know. This is just my preference, and so that's how you're going to see me doing it as I walk through here. Now, this is done. I'm ready to be done with it, so I'm going to clean up my block just by wiping the ink off of my block, and now it's back to its form, ready to be used for whatever the next challenge is. Important step to do that, because I'm going to show you here. This isn't glued down. This is going to be glued down because this is where I have to put it. because when I opened up my sample card to stamp the inside, which is beautiful, thank you, well, that's where the thank you is going to go, 2 simple words filled with warmth and gratitude. I opened it onto my block and got a nice big bluebird there. Now, it's not awfully placed because I am just going to go ahead and put my sentiment here. But I am going to tell you I was intending to have my thank you come in from this side. Or even this side. I hadn't decided. I wanted it to come in from one of the left or right sides and then torn off on the edge. But this is definitely going to be strategically placed to cover up my bluebird. So yeah, you definitely want to clean up as soon as you're done with that ink, or move it off as far as you can. I thought I had it moved off far enough. I had it kind of settled in my light over here, but still wasn't far enough. So anyways, that is the end of the technique. From here on, I'm just going to leave this dry, but what I would do is peel the washi tape off. It can be reused a couple of times if you're going to make maybe more in the same sitting. This is the same washi tape I used for this one. Now I'm going to use for this card. But then just roll it up and throw it away. Then the next things I did was I matted this on a Night of Navy. So let me grab my ruler. The final size of our fluid 100 watercolor paper ended up being 3.5 by 4 5/8. I think. Is that right? I'm really bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. And then my Night of Navy matte then is 3 5/8 by 4 3/4, I think is where I ended up on that. Wow, why is this not making sense to me? Okay, so I had fluid. I should have written this down. Bear with me, guys. Like I said, coffee. So we've got 3.5 by 4 3/4. Okay, there we go. This is right. 3.5 by 4 3/4 for your fluid 100 watercolor paper. Next, we have Night of Navy matted at 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. And then that's glued down on a piece of thick basic white. It's just a standard card base of 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4. Then what did we use? We used the Arctic Bears stamp set for the beautiful little bear stamped in Memento, Mama and Baby Bear stamped in Memento, and then die cut using the corresponding dies of polar bear dies. Now that is a bundle. Then I cut out a shimmer white iceberg from that same die set. And then I even added more Stella to that. It was shimmery white, but I wanted even more shimmer. And then, let's see here, I used Pool Party and Misty Moonlight re-inkers and our water painters, as well as our Stella Pen to make the background. Then this is just basic white here with the die cut to create the little snow hills in the background. And the sentiment, yeah, all the rest is still from that Arctic Bears set. So same with the corresponding imagery on the inside. So thank you for bearing with me in my like hot mess of a morning that I'm having here. But I hope you enjoy this card. I'm actually going to glue this down while we're talking because there really is no other place to put this based on the bluebird that I made. But you know what? To be honest, that is what makes, first of all, that's what makes us creative people like brilliant problem solvers, because I had a problem, I solved it. And Chris has a stamp here somewhere that perfectly explains, oh, I'm not going to be able to find it, but it basically, oh, here it is. This is an individually crafted work of art. Any smudges, splotches, or other irregularities are intentional and do not diminish the quality of this piece in any way. That's a perfect description of what we got going on here with this technique card that I just made with you. But I hope you enjoy it. Here, let's flip her back around. I hope you enjoyed this card. Let me know what you think of not only the card, but also the technique. I personally love watercolor. I love the look of it. I love doing it. It's very therapeutic to me. I like that there's really no stress to me because I know it's not going to look like every other one I've seen. It's literally impossible to make two that look the same, and I think that kind of puts my mind at ease. Like, just do what you can and make it beautiful. So enjoy. I hope you have a wonderful Technique Thursday, and we will catch you live tonight.